Well, this ceasefire worked out by the U.S. and Russia has been met with positive responses worldwide. But as we saw in Lizzie Phelan's report, the possibility of stopping the violence in Syria is slim, especially since there are so many rival factions on the ground. RT's Alexey Yaroshevsky looks at how the country divides between the fighting groups.
What do we picture when we hear the word ceasefire? Sides of a conflict silencing their guns, negotiations of peaceful solutions get underway, and civilians stop dying. But can that be the case of Syria? Let's look at the map of who actually owns what in the war-torn country. Now, as of February 1st, the government forces have been controlling almost half of the country, from the south of As-Suwaida to the homes and the areas around the city of Aleppo, getting closer and closer to the previously rebel-controlled cities. Now, all the areas north of that have been controlled by the rebel alliances, including the Free Syrian Army and such, as well as chunks of territories in the south also controlled by the opposition forces. Now, the north of the country is mostly controlled by the so-called Syrian Democratic Forces, the alliance which includes the Kurds, the Assyrian, the Arab forces, as well as the Turkmen militia. Now, this is the most puzzling participant of the civil war because it's allied to both the US-led coalition and the Russia-Syria alliance, fighting against ISIS, but also having skirmishes with Turkey, which is part of the US-led coalition as well, as we know. And there's, of course, the Islamic State, which controls most of the country, its center, parts of the west and the east, and its headquarters being, of course, the city of Raqqa. It's worth mentioning that ISIS and al-Nusra Front, as well as other terrorist groups, as defined by the United Nations, are not part of the US-Russia ceasefire plan. The plan, which has been lauded by a plethora of world governments, both Moscow and Washington, insist while the government-opposition hostilities will be stopped, the fight against the terrorist groups will not. Joint statements from Presidents Putin and Obama said that the ceasefire will allow both to work out legitimate targets and which groups must not be fought with. The big question now, of course, is whether this will lead the quagmire which Syria has become out of the never-ending spiral of violence. Alexey Yaroshevsky, RT, reporting from Washington, D.C.